Hey there, everybody. It's Benjamin Morse, comic book artist, and I'm here with another good stream about comics in general and also stuff I'm working on, which, namely, at the moment, is August Purgatory Underground. We have a few days left on this campaign, and I'm really excited to get this one out there. August, even with all my characters I've worked on from Regards Scarlet Twilight, some of the other projects, August is the one I'm really excited about. And it's the character I kind of put more of myself into that I really have a lot of plans for, and really excited to get this campaign going. And we have a couple days left. We have a good amount still to go, but I'm pretty confident we're going to make it. I have some pretty cool plans about some stuff we're going to do in the next couple of days to really just try and bring people on board to what this project's going to be. It's not really just one story. It's going to be a story I kind of keep going with for a long time and have a lot of plans for. So I'm going to share a little bit of that right now. Um, you know, this is something I'm going to send out to backers tomorrow when things are a little calmer. Monday's obviously a pretty busy day, but it's a preview for the next August book I'm going to do called Terminus Mechanica. It's actually part 4 in the August, saga, I guess, for lack of a better word, and just kind of bringing people up to speed on how much I have mapped out for this character, how much I'm going to do, and I think that's really going to be something that's I hope fun to get in on the first version of it, which is live on Zoop now, the Purgatory Underground story. So that's a hardcover. It's 200 plus pages of story, of development art, of deleted scenes, a lot of cool stuff there. And something I'm going to put out tomorrow is this preview of the next August story called called Terminus Mechanica. It used to be called Terminus Angels until I realized someone else had taken that name. Unfortunately, it was a really, really good name. Kind of came from the novel that was the inspiration for Blade Runner called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. They had something that was a big element in there called the Terminus War that happened before the story starts, and presumably it happened in Blade Runner as well. Um, and that word just stuck with me, and it was a big part of the inspiration for this story, this later story. I'm a giant Blade Runner fan. I love the mood of that story. I love the story itself. I'm a big fan of the novel that inspired it once I finally got around to reading that. And this is something that really grew out of that. I wanted to have August be in a very different world than what he starts in. For there to be a lot of sadness there, a lot of missed opportunities to put things right. And that's kind of what this story grew out of. So, a lot of cool stuff here. I think that if you're somebody that likes having a sprawling sci-fi saga and a bunch of volumes of it on your shelves, this is going to be something you'll like. It's going to be around for a long time. I'm not going to quit working on it, really, no matter what, I guess. It's really just this project is my passion. So I have a lot to show off about it, a lot to kind of bring people hope into the world of it, and I definitely want people to know this is something that's going to be is going to take this character through his whole life. You're going to see a lot about how he evolves, how the world he lives in evolves, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope people will join in, and you can head over to zoop.gg and obviously get the first volume of that, which is up for a few more days. Um, but that's I can share more of that, but I can do that later as well. Daniel, are you back?
I'm back.
All right, cool. Sorry, I was going on for a while there, but I couldn't quite hear if you were back or not.
Well, they don't want to interrupt your spiel, so
No, I did have a spiel. I can go on for a while.
yeah. So I'm just hip deep in a whole bunch of projects, including finally getting color start on the next arc of American Dreams. So that's gotten started.
Yeah, I saw you posting about that a little bit, and there was some artwork there.
Yeah.
Really cool stuff to see, and yeah, I really like the world you're building with those characters and how kind of the time that I was saying about August, but like American Dream starts off really early in the century, the 20th century,
Yeah.
and Rook and Knight, for instance, who live in the same world, are much further along.
Yep.
Which is cool to see. I really like there's a lot of room in there to play, I think. And they have some really cool stories and some cool angles on things that we're used to.
Oh, definitely. It's like, and plus I'm trying to fill the gaps where I can. So there's a couple of books that'll take place. They're not overtly, Libertyverse books, but they're tied to it, and you'll see how those interact and connect.
Mhm.
That I have, as of right now, 123 years of possibility.
Yeah. So I'm 99% sure that he does, but does Night Wrath live within the Libertyverse?
Yes, he does.
Okay, that's what I thought.
If I was just talking to someone about him today, because they're trying to get issue 2 more up and running,
Hmm.
but it's also depending on everyone's time and everything. So it's like, can we hurry this up a little?
Well, that's always hard to manage,
Because people
especially
keep
with
telling me,
art.
yeah, because if people tell me like Charlie, like that's one of the best things you ever done. Where's the next issue? And I'm like, I'm waiting on the art team.
Well, I mean, if we're talking, are we talking about Night Wrath or a different book?
Night Wrath.
Okay, yeah, that
Because
artwork was so. And what was your? I'm sorry, I forget your artist's name. I kind of remember it, but I'm going to butcher it.
his handle is Esquivo or Esquivo Art.
Yeah.
It's Gabe Esquivo Santos. And he had to step down as the primary artist, so he's in charge of the art still with our new artist, who I'm not able to divulge who that is yet.
Mhm.
And he's still very much involved in the creation of that angle of the Libertyverse. But he got busy with a little book, the book that happened to be one of the biggest books of the freaking year so far.
It did, yeah. Pretty big news when
And
Wesley Snipes wants to get in the comics.
yeah, and at one point he's like, "I'm like, do you think we need like someone to step in, for a bit so we can get a move on?" And he's like, "Nah, that's just my baby too. We'll be back in no time." Cut to a month later. Hey, remember what you're saying about possibly being a fill-in artist?
Well, with
Well, we
artists
found one.
are
We had to search and he found someone, but as I said, I'm not at liberty to announce who that is yet because we want to get more pages in.
yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I think that his art for that was so. I think even in the ways it was like kind of imperfect, it was perfect as a comment upon that type of artwork.
Yeah.
Like sometimes the cross hatching was like a little bit more than what they actually would have used in the '90s, but it was, I think it needed to call attention to itself. It couldn't just like be artistically, at least. I mean, the story obviously does a little bit more with that and can comment upon it more, but like artistically, I think you have to have a voice there as well. And I think he did that in a really cool way. It was like a little bit too much cross hatching, or like the strokes were a little bigger,
Mm-hmm.
a little brushier than they normally are. Like if you go back and really look at that stuff. And I think that's an important part of looking at that old artwork. Like it was so done, by the seat of their pants, I think, back in the day, that it's one of the things that made it cool, but it also was really cool to see in Night Wrath. It was the perfect modern kind of artistic commentary on that sort of thing.
Yeah, because we're trying to have like this '90s feel of make it a very modern
Yeah,
comic, which is a tightrope walk.
yeah, no, it definitely is. I was. This is the perfect picture, I think, to illustrate it. The Liefeld, I think this is X Force 2. I'm not sure. I
Well,
remember this
Deadpool's
was.
getting hit in the face early on, so
Yeah, it's a backup. I know it was a backup story. I'm pretty sure it was X Force 2, but it doesn't say on the margins. But um, this is something I really noticed about like early Liefeld is he would do the super fine cross hatching. It's probably in the face at least. This is the appropriate amount of what you're trying to do with your grays when you do cross hatching,
okay.
and like it works. And then when you go to this leg here, it's almost like, are those lines on his pants? Like they're so big, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. If you look at a lot of Liefeld from that time period, this is a little later, obviously, and he had a little bit more under control. I think once he had a few different inkers at work. This is modern. sadly, modern Liefeld I really appreciate, but I don't. It just doesn't have the same punch as this stuff. But I think this is a good illustration of it. All this the shading on Shaft's face is about right, and then if you look at like Cable's the reflections here on like his bicep, like that's about the right amount of cross hatching space wise for
Right.
the area it has. And then you get into these areas where it would be like these giant lines, like right here, that almost look like I struggle to think about how that made sense when he was putting it down. And it's interesting if you see a lot of the early art inkers he had on New Mutants, like I think Art T. Bear had inked some of those,
Mhm.
and I think even Dan Green, the late Dan Green, sadly,
Mhm.
um, had inked some of those, and you could see the traditional inkers like struggling to make sense of that.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things I've always just enjoyed looking at about Rob Liefeld's work because it's so cool in some areas, and in some areas you're just like, what in God's name was happening there?
Yeah.
And I thought Ninth when I read the PDF of that, I was like, this was such a good exploration of that aspect of the artwork that came from that period.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Yeah, here's another one. Warpath's like the shading here is just like makes no sense with everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is from the oh god, I don't remember what issue that's from. It's not from the Sideways issue, but this one is.
Was that the one they have in the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man? Yeah, it is.
Yes. Yeah, and I have some other. I think I have some McFarlane images in this folder, and this is a RT Bear, I think, inking
Ah.
Liefeld early on, where you can just see like nobody knew what to do here, like it ended up being the worst of both worlds. But let me see. This is from that crossover, um, and I know I have some Liefeld in this
I'm
folder.
trying. I'm trying to bite my tongue about some of the comments I can make. It's like,
Oh, go for it. I don't know.
it's like I can see what he's going for, but at the same time, it's like, and look, I'm a person who cannot draw to save his freaking life because of dysgraphia.
Mhm.
Even then, I'm like, should that be like that? Even in '90s extreme style,
Yeah,
it's like,
I don't know. I mean, it's you grew up so much later than this. It's hard to describe.
yeah, because like this is like early '90s, right? I was in preschool when this.
Yeah, yeah. See, you didn't have like so. I mean, I read comics when I was in preschool. Like, and it would be comics I got here and there. Like somebody just like, oh, do you want a comic book? And they'd get like Justice League, whatever, and it was drawn by Kurt Swan or someone like that.
Yeah,
Really stale. Even early Perez stuff, and I really appreciate Perez, but I don't like just I don't have that connection to it that I think a lot of people do.
whereas my main comics growing up was my dad's Silver Age stuff, so I,
Hmm.
for example, love the art of the Great Darwin Cook because
Hmm.
it's very much a modernized Silver Age style.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, when that New Frontier actually, I was about to describe how cool this seemed when it came out. How like you get an issue of Spectacular Spider-Man. I really like Sal Buscema now, but as a kid, I couldn't. I like hated that. I'm like, why is this? This doesn't even look like comic book art. And then you'd be reading that next to something like what we're seeing now, and this was so dynamic. It was so cool. It was just
Yeah.
like off the charts. And I was going to say that when New Frontier came out, that felt like the same thing in a very inverse way. Um, and actually, somebody that Chuck mentioned when we were talking last week, Frank Espinoza, did a book called Rockedo that came out, I want to say 2003, 2004, before New Frontier, certainly. And it had a lot, it was a rougher style, but it was very much in the vein of Darwin Cook. And I remember that coming out, and like that blew my mind. I really liked how it looked, and it got a lot of press, but I don't think it did like super well in terms of sales. And I don't know if he did anything really as big after that. But when New Frontier came out, I remember I think they released a preview, the preview of Hal Jordan in Korea, and then a scene with Superman talking to Wonder Woman in the same battlefield, and that was just like night and day. Everybody was like, "This is so cool." They made everything Silver Age, fun again, And I can even remember reading articles about like how much people liked his version of Wonder Woman there. And he says, "Oh man, they made me like they would like they hated what I was doing. They didn't like that she was like thicker. Um, Everything that people ended up responding to and thinking was really awesome was stuff he had to fight to get in there, which is crazy to me because that book was just so perfect."
It's a gorgeous, gorgeous book. I have like I think the 10th or 15th anniversary deluxe edition,
Hmm.
like the big thick paperback. I think what it is. It's a doorstopper of a book. Like
Oh, yeah.
everyone thinks it's like when I think of most people think of the animated series or the animated version, which is pretty much the whole story with some cuts here and there. It's very quick. But if you look at the actual book of
Hmm.
New Frontier, it's a big book.
Oh yeah, I have this. I mean, I bought the single issues. I still have them, and the covers are falling off.
Yeah.
But they are. That was such a cool story, and I don't think, aside from parts of Kingdom Come, and Kingdom Come didn't do this nearly as successfully. I don't think there were any moments that seemed as cinematic or as moving and dramatic as what you got in New Frontier. And I think you got that like basically in every issue after issue 3. You know, 1 and 2 are set up, and that was
Yeah.
fun as well. But like that was such a great. I think that changed comics in almost as big. I think the Ultimates gets a lot of credit for being like the trendsetter of that time, that decade.
Yeah.
But I also think like New Frontier, it was just as impactful, and I think it, in an enduring way, has really like been as influential.
Oh, definitely. It's like, and I think I like that kind of crisp, clear style a bit more personally.
Hmm.
But as I said, I grew up reading my dad's Silver Age stuff, so it's what I was more used to.
Hmm.
Because I unfortunately had a mother who was like, "No, you're not reading modern comic." So, but like when I could get them, it was more of reading more realistic, dynamic style, and I loved it too. So it's like I miss that weird middle ground as Silver Age shifted into the more dynamism because I was like
Yeah.
preschooler,
Hmm.
elementary school student, so it wasn't like a thing. So just that some '90s art, I just have this kind of because it's so a lot of ways it's cool for coolness' sake, which granted not the bad thing, but sometimes it's off.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. It
Yeah,
was just in addition to it looking really cool, it was. I have this attachment to it because it was so impactful when it came out, and it was so night and day from what had come before, and that's what I think really made that shine, and why I still appreciate it. The stuff I was showing before has like such a it pops off the page in the same way I think if you look at like Don Heck from the '60s and like
yeah,
Kirby just popped, and I think Darwin Cook stuff does that as well.
yeah,
But I also think that if you let me put up a Darwin Cook page here. Um, like Darwin Cook also just really pops.
yeah.
And like there's a lot of there's everything that you get from Kirby, everything I think you get from like say Steve Rude or
Mm-hmm.
somebody like that. And I'm not going to say you get all the impact of a really good Liefeld page or a good Image Comics '90s style page because that does have a little bit more pop to it. But I think that his stuff just really it really got it almost encapsulated everything that had come up in comics that was good up until like 1990 and took that it almost was like artwork just branched out in 2 different directions, and this was a good direction as well, like one of my favorites. But
Yeah.
I still, I mean, I love all the Image stuff.
And it's also like the great Aparo. Aparo was working for decades, and he uses his
Oh
style to keep up. And there's also Brayful. This I'm looking at Nightfall, for example. There's some
yeah,
really great balances of styles that all just really mesh well.
yeah. I remember thinking how like I mean I was a big Brayfogle fan. It's a shame we're going to talk about this when Chuck's not around,
I know.
but
Right,
the
Chuck?
sorry, but Brayfogle, like that was the stuff that really got to me when I was a kid. I loved how that stuff looked, and Jim Aparo was not not doing, I think, his best stuff at the same time. So I'd be reading, Detective Comics with Greyfogle 1 month, and that was amazing. And then you'd see Jim Aparo stuff that was not necessarily quite as dynamic as him in his heyday. And I think that was an unfair comparison, because if you look at the stuff that Aparo was doing, just a little bit before, which I'm going to throw up here now. This is, I think, from Death of a Family. Let's see here.
Yeah. Like, you see Aparo's style and Brayfogel's style being similar in that they meshed well.
Yeah. I think with Aparo, it came down to how the inking was, because I think the pencilers in that era were used to doing really loose stuff. And that was kind of a, like, I've seen some stuff of his that he's inked himself. It's not my favorite of his work, Jim Aparo.
Yeah.
But it's got a lot of merit to it, and you can see it brings a lot of the drawing out, because he had amazing fundamentals, amazing draftsmanship. And if you look at some of the stuff Mike DiCarlo inked, and he's the inker on this page we got up now, he would get in there and do some really great textures. This stuff on Superman's hair is amazing. And then you'd see, this is actually a lot more shading than they would generally get into. Normally you'd see shading was kind of like what you see on this collar here. Really smooth, a little bit of cross hatching. This has a lot more texture than normally they would do. But this is, I think, a really solid DiCarlo Aparo page.
Yeah.
And the stuff he was doing around Nightfall, he was kind of, it almost seemed like he was trying to make it look more old-fashioned, compared to, say, what Brayfogle was doing and what the new people would do once they switched over to Azrael taking over there. But I'm a huge Aparo fan. I mean, when you get him at his prime, I would argue that is a more classic Batman than Neil Adams' Batman.
Speaking of, Neil Adams was great, though I think towards the end he was maybe a little too widescreen, a little too.
Are we talking about the one that he wrote himself?
Well, there's a couple things he wrote himself. So basically, the Batman one, the Superman one, and the Deadman one.
Yeah, they were all.
I mean, the art. Well, it's like I like to say about All-Star Batman and Robin. The art's better than the writing.
Yeah.
And granted, this is Neil Adams. Still a legend. I have my copy of his, Batman and Omnibus. I have signed by him. So I went to his studio a couple of times.
Oh, cool.
The one by Brian Park.
Very cool.
I don't know that's extant anymore because he's now no longer with us. But that was always fun to say hi to him every so often because he was in my work neighborhood. But like, if you look at like his art, it's very dynamic. But like, I think over time, it got maybe a little too dynamic, like a little too.
Yeah.
Like some of those opening splash pages in Batman. What was it called? That Batman.
Odyssey?
Yeah. It was a little too boom.
It was almost like the ones, especially where he was like talking to the camera.
Yeah.
There was a really great breakdown of that on Comics Alliance, where they were just like, they were mocking it, which is a little ugly, but it was hilarious. They were like, does Bruce just have this person tied up to a chair in the Batcave and he's like monologuing at them like a supervillain? Like,
they might know who it is actually, but yeah.
I didn't get to the end of it. It was so bizarre, and
I tell you because it's
absolutely.
It's Clark Kent.
Oh my god, are you serious with this? Oh my!
It makes no sense. Like, I know he was probably doing Marvel style. Like I do, sometimes I do quasi Marvel style, which is I do a page by page breakdown, or at least a good page length. Not like a paragraph. I'll do like a page length breakdown of what like all the beats I want, and then I tell the artist like I'll step in if need be, but like at it. It's like I don't know if he even did a constructive outline.
Well, it's weird because you could tell he had things he was trying to do that he wanted to do. I could tell there was a scene really early on with I think he was on a train. There was a bomb on it. He was trying to get some people off.
Yeah, the flashback within a flashback within a flashback.
Yeah, which I was struggling to think of how to even describe it because I knew there was more to it than that. And it was bizarre because he had guns like the Shadow. He was like shooting at people, but just to scare them. and then he would switch to being sort of an Adam West in terms of his dialogue, like an Adam West version of Batman, and
Yeah.
talk to bystanders. It was just so. It was the most disjointed scene I
It's
think I've ever.
very the book's very ad hoc writing
Yeah,
wise. It's very like like not as like it would have been helped if he had a outline.
I think so. I think that it got so wild in ways that if you look at other series, or actually, you know what, a good analog is the current World's Finest that Mark Waid is doing. Um, it's pretty out there. It's pretty it gets supernatural, it gets down and dirty, it gets sci-fi at different points, and it's
Right.
all within the same story. You've got certain character arcs working out, in a pace to that, while the settings change in a big way.
And
That
but
seems like a successful way of doing that.
yeah, but Wade probably does like some tight plotting and outlining
Yeah.
before.
Well, he's probably like, a writer or
Yeah.
something. I'm sorry. I should do like
I
10
know
headlines.
we shouldn't. We
Mocking,
should.
mocking Neil Adams is wrong. I can't
Yeah, I
do
know.
it.
And, like he's not here to defend himself, and
Yeah. No,
so on and so
but it
forth.
was a strange. Um, I do think that if you look, people would mock the fact that it would go, from like pretty street level action stuff to, something that's more. I think they were in the Warlord, like underground sort of Hollow Earth thing.
Yeah, because Jan apparently believes the whole Hollow Earth.
Yeah, I got into some of that. I saw he had like a Pangea Hollow Earth theory that the Earth was expanding in a certain way. That
Yeah,
it was something, but interesting stuff. I mean, it was certainly comic book appropriate, and I
true.
think that with a little bit of a tighter character, through line, which maybe that sort of opening monologue where he's talking to Clark Kent, I guess it turns out it is in the cave, that makes sense. That works out. Like that was supposed to be kind of the framing device that made all this make sense. But they were like different versions of him and Robin that were like dumber, that I think were from the Underverse, whatever.
Yeah, there's like the Batman's a Neanderthal.
Yeah,
The Robin's like a Dino Prince.
yeah,
And then, I mean, on the other hand, you also have like looking at my own bookshelf over here, um, Alex Ross.
yeah.
Very painterly, but sometimes it's a little too static for comics.
I agree. I mean, Alex Ross is up there in Mount Rushmore, but
Don't get me wrong, like his
Yeah.
art is. I have like a Kingdom Come, I have Marvels. I have an absolute edition of his little Justice League one shots he did with Paul Dini
each of
and
the
Jeff
four
Loeb and others,
characters, yeah.
and like they're gorgeous. The art's great,
Mhm.
but it's very static.
Yeah,
That's because he's primarily more of a painter
yeah.
than he is a sequential draftsman. Don't get me wrong, he does it, it's just not the same.
Yeah. Actually, I want to talk more about this, but Joey left a great comment about a fantastic pitch from you today. I know you probably don't want to share a ton of it, but can you give me a little bit of what that's about or what you were working on?
I'll share a little
Some
bit
thoughts
about
first.
it. It was I'll say that I sent it to like 6 or 7 publishers. I only heard back from one.
Mhm.
Obviously rejection. I might retune it. I was going back with Dodie and Tebby and Matt. We had brought in another colorist, so I think he's now out of the business, unfortunately. But basically, my idea is it's centuries after a extinction level event seemingly has wiped out humanity. So now we have like animal humanoids,
Mhm.
ruling the earth, and they stumble upon the last human teenager.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, as creatures evolve, certain things just stay the same, and they have to deal with cults and everything that are trying to upset the balance.
Cool.
Now, come on, the little Zootopia, and these are probably indirect influences. But like Dodie and I were just like spitballing because we wanted to pitch something,
Mhm.
and he came up with one like a reference, and I like let me toy if you were referring to it. I came up with this story. I wrote out the first issue. I outlined the series. We did like the first 6 or 7 pages and the cover.
Mhm.
And I pitched it like literally the day after Baltimore Comic Con. I pitched it out.
Awesome.
And I only heard back from one company
Well, that happens. I've been there.
after 6 months.
I have certainly been there. It took me years to get a response in August at all, ever. Um, but yeah, it sounds like this is it sounds like this one is pretty. Oh wait, Joey left a comment here. Logline, the
Hey,
discovery.
it's like I read the log line.
Okay, of the last. Yeah, I mean that sounds pretty cool. I don't know. I think he's right. That is pretty awesome for the market right now, as well.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk to Doty once we're done with some American Dreams arc 2 and figure out if we want to reconnoiter it for some.
Mhm,
Probably, but maybe with more of a structural editor. We'll see.
mhm. Sounds good. Well, it's good to hear things are taking shape.
I got a ton of stuff
I do too, man.
working on. It's driving me nuts. But yeah, there's a really good Alex Ross page.
Yeah, I was going to say this is an example of him being really dynamic, but it's all in the layout.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, this was I think from a Batman Black and White, and this is I think where he really shines is like he collages stuff together, and it's a little more like the story can be very. This is like a voiceover. If this wasn't a movie, it's not quick cuts. It's not cinematic.
yeah,
It's very, like it can kind of wander along this, and that gives him the freedom to do this collagey thing that works really well for that and makes the page dynamic, even if the figures themselves, although these are pretty dynamic figures. This is a pretty good Joker with a lot of energy to it, but it's not like Jack Kirby energy. It's not Darwin Cook energy.
right.
Um, Joey's saying anthropomorphic stories are where it's at right now. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've seen a lot of Kickstarters doing really well with that, so that is definitely. I mean, there was something fun about just talking animals. I mean, that's something that's always been popular in cartoons.
Yeah,
Captain Marvel had a great supporting cast of those. Commandy was really cool. There's just something about talking animals and anthropomorphic stuff that really just works. So
yeah. Maybe I'll talk to Doty about this tomorrow. See if he wants me to us to work more on that pitch. And we might have to get a new colorist
ah
from. Yeah, I said our colorist was on the pitch no longer. Unfortunately, decided to step back from the industry.
ah yeah, it's
Yeah, the Great Kingdom Come, Batman rises once again scene.
yeah. No, I mean, and this is another page that's like really dynamic because of the story, but I don't think there's any figure there or gesture aside from maybe I forget what her name is. I think she's Darkstar.
Oh, no,
She's,
let's see.
she's
That one. She's. I know she's supposed to be Oliver Queen's and Black Canary's daughter. I don't. Problem is,
yeah.
half these characters don't even have names in the book.
No, not in the book. I mean, they have in the back matter. They do.
Yeah, that's the problem. I have to go for the back matter to find my copy.
Yeah.
But there's like Tomcat or
This is a
Wildcat
good
3
figure.
or whatever it is.
This is a pretty cool figure, actually. Whoever this is here, that's pretty Kirby-esque, actually. I like
Yeah,
that.
it's reminds me of a Tomcat or Wildcat from JSA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's what that's intended to be. I was talking about this yellow sort of bat person behind there.
That is interesting.
It's pretty cool. I never really looked at that before. But yeah, I think his stuff is really strong. I mean, it's perfect. I mean, I don't think anybody has a bad thing to say about Alex Ross, but like it works because it's doing a lot of other things, and like and the story was so dramatic. And I don't. Have you ever read the original pitch he had for Kingdom Come?
I did not.
So it's really heavily influenced by an Alan Moore pitch called Twilight of the Superheroes.
Yeah.
Which was pretty interesting and had a pretty good, I would say, framing device with John Constantine, like interacting with the future of the DC universe. That part really worked. It got into some lurid Watchmen-esque stuff with heroes that I don't want to see be taken that direction. I didn't love that. But it also had like some really good stuff where you're really taking how much power Superman has, and especially if like there's a Superman family, that's going to be geopolitical. That's going to make differences. It dug into some of that in a fun way, but it also had like a very, well, this person's on this person's side now. Well, but they switched. Now they're on this person's side now, and it was kind of like pro wrestling. It was a little Um, I didn't think it quite worked completely as
That's
a
why DC probably shelved the original
yeah. It was.
four pitch.
I think it needed to be polished, and I'm sure Alan Moore would have done that. The original thing for Kingdom Come was, I think, even more so. It was be like Superman is trying to do this, and Batman doesn't like it, and then Superman's like, "Ah, I recruited Nightwing or whatever Nightwing was in the Kingdom Come verse." Um,
Red Robin.
yeah, it was just like very. I think in the pitch it wasn't even Red Robin yet. It was just like whatever he was, the new Robin or the sort. I think it was pretty akin to the sort of JSA Earth 2 Robin at that point. But it was like it just wasn't like Robin saying, "No, I'm more on Superman's team." It's just not that dramatic, and it was a lot of this sort of switching side stuff. So yeah, I really have to credit Mark Waid with what he came in and did to the series because it really works. But I think so many of these panels in Kingdom Come are so cinematic because like the momentum they built up was so amazing. And I think even in the first issue, they managed to really give you moments that were like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? They were almost like Spielberg moments. They were really ton of build up. You can almost hear music in your head, and they worked. And I think that that's a lot of what Alex Ross's work benefits from. Is he's managed to construct his stories and work with writers that can help him do that to really build to that moment. I think even Full Circle, which I think he did completely himself,
Yeah.
still had that sort of like. I think it was more of a like Kingdom Come is like a Bible story. It's the end of something. It's really epic.
Well, it literally is because look who the framing character is.
Yeah, and I think that Full Circle, if you've read that, was almost more. It was as dramatic in the way it ought to have been, but it's not that epic. It was almost a. It's almost like this was just an issue. This was like Fantastic Four 57 and a half. It didn't have to be, like the end. This wasn't like somebody's big story in their life as far as Fantastic Four went,
Yeah.
but it still had really good moments that had, I think, the right amount of scope. When they ran into Annihilus, they ran into somebody I think that was in the previous issue of Fantastic Four that was a college partner of Reed's or something like that. But it had the right amount of dramatic oomph for the story it was trying to tell, and I think Alex Ross is so good at that.
And I also got another artist I'm going to bring up for more for like a cinematic art style, of course, is Brian Hitch.
Oh yeah, I can do that.
I say go more of his. I like his Hawkman run, especially because I'm more of a DC guy. I know he did a decent Justice League mini-ish thing, but
Yeah,
I think it's
he did.
Hawkman, where he's primarily the artist, not the writer, was
I think
where
he was Robert Venditti. I
Right.
think was the writer there, and
Yes,
it was really good stuff.
yeah, it was like a contrast to the Justice League run where Hitch was writer and artist.
Yeah, that was not that was pretty
It was,
good.
it was okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't
It wasn't quite. Let me bring this up. It wasn't. It was pretty. It was pretty solid. I mean, I think it was not. I think it was. It's the thing that really worked against it was that it was. It was sort of a big Justice League story at a time where they were like switching over to. I think that's about when Rebirth was brewing.
yeah.
If I could be wrong about this. It didn't seem. It
It
felt
was,
very much like
it was
a
like
big deal, but like something else was coming right after it.
it was like the DCU. It was the DC. It was the DCU era just before Rebirth, I think.
Yeah. And I thought it was because it had a pretty cool villain from Krypton. I'm not a big fan of villains from Krypton
Yeah.
outside of General Zod. I think there's just once you open that Pandora's box any more than it's been opened, it's just not interesting anymore.
Yeah. Which is why if I was to write Superman, I like to keep it more to Metropolis villains because
Oh yeah,
first of all, more fun to write.
yeah.
And like Lex being completely is always fun to write. Toyman, like I would say my Toyman influence if I was to write Toyman is the Superman the Animated Series Toyman because that version creeped me the out as a kid.
It is creepy.
Yeah, like I mean Toyman in general is creepy. Bruce Timm up the creepy.
He did. They do a lot of that really great Batman episode with the Gray Ghost. The
Yeah,
villain was basically Bruce Timm, and he was a toy collector.
yeah,
Uh,
and like I think Bruce Timm actually voiced that character too, which makes it even
I think he
funnier.
did. Yeah, I mean, props to him for being that. I'd be too vain to be like, yeah, I'm this person. I would be like, no, that's not. I'm not putting that out there about myself.
Yeah,
But it was a great episode. It was a great villain. I think it even a little bit more notable in the fact that sort of fanboy criticism, I guess, or the archetype of a fanboy, aside from like the comic book guy from The Simpsons, wasn't really out there yet. As big a thing as that is now, or as a much of a, I guess, mimetic archetype. I don't know if a better word for
yeah,
it. That is, this was in 1992, 3, 4, and
your take, yeah.
as in many things, they were that far ahead of the curve. But I
And then
think that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I will say one of my favorite characters from the animated series, which hasn't been in the mainstream titles yet. She's shown up in, I think, the White Knight first, so that doesn't count
Hmm.
as being in the main universe yet. And that's Baby Doll.
Yeah. Yeah.
Creepy character, but like I could see her as like a Norman Desmond type
Oh
in
yeah,
Sunset
I can see it.
Boulevard.
Well, that's the
I
yeah, that's the
like
idea.
I always wrote like part of a story idea, and the idea is by day she's like very Norma Desmond, former star. Like I wrote like she lives on
Yeah.
like a combination, so the mansion where Norma Desmond lives slash Desi Lou slash whatever Michael Neverland Ranch. So her actual studio's on her property and it's abandoned.
Hmm.
And then she goes for a drive in it, and of course she changes into the baby doll persona and goes to torment her former co-stars.
Yeah.
And yes, she's a creepy character, but she's a sympathetic creepy character.
Oh yeah, no, she is. You totally
Same thing
get
with
that.
Toyman and Superman the Animated Series, even though the creep factor I think overrides more than in the case of Baby Doll. Toyman
Yeah.
really ups the creep factor because it's a great delivery by the guy who I think was he's the same guy who voiced Question played.
Oh, that's Jeffrey Combs. If
Yeah, I
it's
think
the same guy, I don't know if he is the
I
same
think
guy,
Jeffrey Cole.
but he did the
Let me
question.
double check. But whoever did the voice of Toyman, Superman the Animated Series, was really, really creepy. Bud Court did it in
Oh God, yeah, no, he'd be good at that. That's Harold Maude.
yeah,
Uh, jeez. My dad really likes that movie, so I saw it when I was pretty young.
yeah. So Bud Court does Toyman, and Toyman he has a very, very sympathetic story when you find out he's either the actual former Toyman or he's the son of the toy of a actual toy manufacturer.
Hmm.
And it's also a great episode because it introduces some Kirby elements. It introduces intergangs, which is
Hmm.
always a fun bunch of baddies.
Oh,
Again,
yeah,
countless
Intergang
baddies.
is great. I love it when anytime they use Intergang, I'm on board.
And then like you also have Parasite, you have Livewire, you have Silver Banshee, you have
I like Silver
all these
Banshee.
great characters who don't show up that often for some reason.
I think they just brought Silver Banshee
They
back
just did.
with
Metallo, I
Jimmy
know they're
Olsen.
doing for Superman 78 Part 2.
Oh, who are they doing?
Metallo.
Oh,
As
okay.
in
Oh,
this
that's
case,
who
he's a
that's going to be.
Russian.
Okay,
Soviet.
I saw the preview pages. I wasn't sure if that was going to be Metallo or something else, but that's cool.
It's going to be Metallo. I think it's implied to be heavily to be Metallo.
All
And
right.
and also, speaking of Metallo, great performance in Superman the Animated Series by Michael McDowell,
Yeah. Oh, he was great.
being wonderfully smarmy because he shows up in the pilots,
Oh yeah,
three-part
no,
pilot,
I think he was,
playing John Corbin, but as a arms dealer slash terrorist.
which I think is a good way to do it. When they made him an army guy, I think they did that in New 52, and then he was just a thief in the Man of Steel miniseries.
He's in New 50 in Secret Origin. He's also military.
Okay,
He's
one
General
works.
Lane's like aide de camp, I think.
Yeah, I think he was in the New 52, and he was in love with Lois Lane, and
Yeah.
it
I
works. I guess I don't know.
I mean, that would work, but in some ways, the original version where he's a thief, it's just a little, it's fun.
There's something cool about, because I don't feel like there are people in the world now that are just like, I'm a thief, or I rob banks or something like.
Well, there's the rogues, but there's another
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, I think there's something fun about that because it's just so direct.
Yeah.
And it works.
I mean, I wrote spoilers for Night Wrath. There's an issue of Night Wrath I've scripted already, which is a bank robbery, so that's gonna be fun. I've introduced a fun gang concept for that, so
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about the Dark Knight movie, which I respect that movie. It's not my favorite interpretation of Batman on any level,
Yeah,
but I love that like robbing banks is such a comic book cliche, and yet they decided I'm going to do a really good bank robbery scene that works, that doesn't lean into any sort of silliness, any camp at all,
yeah,
and works. I really respected that. I thought that was so cool to just take the most comic booky convention and make it work within that context. I
yeah.
thought that was great.
And I just love. Meanwhile, I love using the comic booky stuff because it's fun.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing. That's what Scarlet Twilight was, my attempt to just be like, let's embrace every cool thing about this, make it work a little bit. I mean, I brought some, I think, like modern adult logic to it, enough to make it to thread it together basically. But I really
Yeah,
wanted to. It was all kind of in the service of like making those sillier things work,
yeah,
or making them make sense, make them have momentum. Like, because that stuff, especially, I have to say, if you go back and look at, it's pretty uneven. If you look at like the America's Best comics, which is like Black Terror, Pyro Man,
yeah,
Doc Strange, not our Doctor Strange, but another character called Doc Strange,
yeah,
and some of those guys, those were pretty weak in terms of stories. But if you look at like the old Captain Marvel, the old Superman, and the old Batman comics, those are really solid. They're not. There's some disturbing elements in them because of the time period. There's obviously there's some hokiness to it, but those are like good 15-20 page reads.
yeah,
They really do work, and I think that was a lot of Scarlet Twilight was me like you always look back at that old stuff and think like, yeah, there's something cool about it, but it's not really good. It doesn't stand on its own to modern eyes. And when I went back and researched a little bit of that stuff, I was surprised to find no, a lot of this stuff really holds up, at least on its own. There's things we find objectionable about
yeah,
some stuff in there. There's but the pacing of it, I used to think was like just primitive and dumb and kind of not good or disturbing. But I think that stuff is done. How fast paced it is very much in service to the story. They have some pretty elaborate mysteries in the old Batman comics. Lots of red herrings. It's almost like the amount of plot in an hour long Law and Order episode from the '90s.
yeah.
And
Like
20
the
good.
the original Batman recurring villain wasn't even the Joker; it was Doctor Death.
Yeah,
We didn't
yeah,
even make a real resurgence until Scott Snyder brought him back for Year Zero.
yeah, yeah. No, it's that's there's like I was really surprised. I knew I liked the atmosphere of the old stuff. I knew I liked some of the directness of it, but I didn't like until I went back and started reading some of those. I was like, this isn't like good with an asterisk. It's really good, and there are so many storytelling conventions they use, and so much. I would say like the pacing of those stories that just plain old works. I mean,
Yeah,
there's so much of that I look at, and that's why I wanted to do Scarlet Twilight again for the sequel. I want to bring even more of that in and have it be a little more episodic, have a little bit more denser stories within a larger kind of epic story.
yeah,
Because the first Scarlet Twilight was kind of I think it was paced like a modern comic in a lot of ways. It had a pretty 90-minute movie sort of, I guess, runtime to it
yeah,
that is more modern, and it takes elements of that, especially visual elements, and puts it in there. But in doing the research, I was almost like, I need to do something that's even closer to this old stuff because there's so much good stuff there to work with. It's a shame to just dip into it once.
yeah. I like to toy with some more episodic stuff with American Dreams after Arc 2,
Mhm.
just to get that a little more done.
Have you ever thought about doing some American Dream like 10-page sort of capers? Like if you look at an old Captain Marvel or Marvel Family comic, there'd be like,
Yep. I wrote those two shorts for the original American Dreams trade, those
okay,
6 page shorts.
hmm
So I like to maybe do a little bit more if I can. It just comes down to, of course, time and money.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
There's a
of
lot
course,
of
the banes of all comic book creators.
that is it. Yeah, it's either money or time or
Yeah,
both.
yeah. But like you're talking about the episodic stuff or some big epics, like one of the first like big episodic storytelling in Batman is Batman versus the Vampire Monk,
Yeah,
which is a completely batshit story. It's one of the greatest covers of all time with the Haunted Mansion and everything.
Mhm.
I think Matt Wagner did a take on that too.
That's what I'm googling right now to bring up on screen.
The Mad Monk. The Mad Monk is technically what it's called.
Yeah, yeah. I have all the floppies of this.
And there's some really strange ones. I don't know who wrote them because we don't think it's Bob Kane. But yeah, this is the Matt Wagner.
Mhm.
Wagner or Wagner? What is it?
No, it's Wagner, I think.
Okay. Always want to double check pronunciations. But yeah, this is like basically a modern adaptation, and they did this like a 4-part. And I think the original was like 2 or 3-part story. Maybe closer to 2 parts, which again shows everything's more decompressed these days.
Mhm.
But like I have like old Silver Age stuff where they can tell the main story in like 12 pages, and you still have another 12 to 20 pages of additional stories. Not all of them are huge. Some of them are like maybe 6 pages. Some of them are like 4. But they're usually some really fun stuff. We don't have that anymore because costs go up. And
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think people demand more of a direct experience. Like if I'm buying, especially how much comics cost now. You're right.
yeah.
Like if I want to buy Spider-Man, like drawn by John Romita Jr., I want all of that to be John Romita Jr. I want it to be the same story. I don't want to like get half of that and then half of like some other artist doing a funny story about Mary Jane doing whatever. Like it's not
Right.
It's more of an. I mean, honestly, when I was a kid at the grocery store, I had $5 to spend. That could get me 2 comics, but not 3. I mean, I had to make decisions, so it was kind of like you really had to measure out what you were getting for your dollar.
Yeah.
And you do now too.
They're just again, Ultimate Miners as well as those great classic lines and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
like,
he's so good at this. He did 2 series like this, and I'm struggling to think of the other one. What its name was?
is that Curse of the
Monster Men.
it's not a Chemical Syndicate. I know
It was the Monster Men. It was called.
the Monster Men. Oh, early Hugo Strange.
Yeah, yeah.
Hugo
In fact,
Strange. Now that's a crazy ass baddie.
I was just reading, actually, just today when I was waiting for some stuff.
I have that somewhere in the house. I have my own copy. Found that Strand for like an obscene amount of money.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was like, because it's a lot of print. It was like $45 just for the paperback.
Oh my God! Well, I'm lucky I got this for whatever the cover price was.
Well, I found it out of print.
Oh,
Yeah, Hugo Strange. If you read like early Hugo Strange stuff, he's again one of the earliest reoccurring baddies.
yeah.
For Batman, he's nuts.
I mean, he's a good villain. At least in this. I mean, I don't. I have read the original one. I liked it. I love his animated series appearance.
Yeah.
But he has like in this story. You've read this one, right?
Yes.
Or Marshall Rogers. Yeah. Like he makes a very short appearance, but boy, does he make an impression.
Yeah, and then there's of course one of my favorite stories is the one where Bit and Pieces is the one where he dresses up as Batman.
Yeah.
And proceeds to try to brainwash Bruce Wayne. Now that works, it actually backfires on everyone surprisingly. But again, it's the great. It's written by Devin Grayson.
Aside from Rupert Thornbutton, and he would have gotten away with it. It worked.
Yeah, it's written by Devin Grayson, and it has one of the greatest splash panels because everyone thinks it's Batman, much like Hugo Strange Batman. And he goes, "I'm the paragon of mental health," and everyone's like, "No, you're not." Hugo Strange is based for a great baddie. They did a take on Monster Men, I think during Rebirth. It's part of the Tom King. Whoever was writing Detective at the time. Along with a couple other. It was like a Tom King, James Tinney, and Steve Orlando called Night of the Monster Men, and it was more kaiju than anything else.
Oh, okay. I haven't read
It's
that at
interesting.
all.
It's really interesting because it's part of the. It's combining the Tom King Batman run. It's the first big crossover between Tom King Batman and James Tinian the Fourth's detective run.
Yeah.
But I think Steve Orlando was taking point for the actual story.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I love that. I love that sort of environment for Batman. And I don't think I'd ever read Marshall Rogers Batman stuff, and Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers, he's
Yeah.
the writer, until I was much older, and I just kept reading about it, and I'd see like Marshall Rogers artwork. I didn't love it. It was kind of like a very plain version of Todd McFarlane, and I'm not the biggest Todd McFarlane fan.
Yeah.
I like him now. I appreciate it. I loved Spawn back in the day. Oh, Joey Galvez is saying he hates Tom King's Batman, and I mostly agree. I will say I've read a lot of Tom King where he goes off on the flashbacks and the dream states and the real deconstructive stuff. I can't stand it. But I will say when he sits down and tries to write like a straight up Batman story, um, without a lot of status quo altering stuff, I really liked it. There was this story where Batman had to serve on the jury of Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
and I'm like, that was an all time classic.
And it's a simple 2-3 parter.
Yeah, it's just a
And, it's
very
about,
like
and there's plenty of action in it. You got in
yeah
flashback. The real drama is because it's 12 angry men.
yeah. No, it was a great. It had some great, and I think it does allow him to deconstruct Batman a little bit in that way. And I think if he were reined in a little bit, granted, I'd hate if anyone said it about me, but when he just kind of tries to write a meat and potatoes Batman or Superman story, I gotta say I'm impressed. And
I mean,
I kind of came to that as like a Tom King kind of hater. Not hater exactly. I was like, oh, I don't like that stuff where it's real 9 panels, deconstruction, talking to the camera. Yeah, it ain't for me.
that is,
Um,
but yeah, I do love his. He did probably a really good Supergirl mini, which I still have to read.
no, I love Bickwis. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. Bickwis Elvy's artwork is amazing. I want to read that.
And
And I
he
think,
did a great Superman mini with
yes, Up in the Sky.
Rebirth.
Yeah, great stuff. Joey was saying, what was the one he did with Booster Gold during Rebirth? I think you're talking
Just
about Heroes in Crisis.
no, I think he's no, I think he's referring to the it's the arc just before the wedding that didn't happen.
Oh, where Batman is like in the alternate, or he sees the like alternate Western universe Batman, but he's not in like the old West, but he's like a gunslinging. Oh, he was Heroes in
Yeah,
Crisis.
no, so it's actually that, and then there's one just before the wedding where Booster tries to create the best wedding present he can by bringing back Booster's
That's
parents, and
yeah.
Booster being Booster and an idiot, he messes things up
That
royally.
was so dumb. Like he goes to that alternate version of like a multiverse world where Batman's a gunslinger, but like a kind of a cowboy Batman in modern day. It's kind of interesting, but yeah, I didn't like that either. Yeah, Heroes in Crisis is the one Joey was talking about. I did not. I mean, I got to say this. I'm the world's biggest Wally West fan, so of course, I hated that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
as people have blamed editorial, I think more retroactively blamed editorial more than anything else.
I could see that. Yeah, and the fact that he like it was weird because they tarnished Wally West's character to such a big degree,
They fixed it though.
but they also like they fixed it, but they also like, but he still did that kind of.
Actually, I believe that was retcon. It was something else that did it.
Okay, well, like Doctor
Yeah.
Manhattan came in the
Yeah,
picture.
something was revealed during, I think, either the Dark Metal Saga or it was revealed during one of the Flash.
Okay,
I forget. I'm also woefully behind.
yeah, I am too.
I say that someone with a DC Universe subscription.
Yeah, to me that was like the fact that they made him do that. Then they kind of instantly retconned it, and then, as Joey says, they retconned the retcon as well. I think they did.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's like why you make him do this incredibly ugly thing for whatever reason, and then you kind of wipe it off the board. But it's like we still kind of saw that. It's like it's almost like weird to like tarnish the character and then say no, never mind. But like then what the heck did we just see, sort of thing. I didn't. I was really there for the Clayman art. Clay is I don't know. I'm saying his first name.
That's what Clay. Yeah, it's Clayman.
It
What's
was just
funny
they just man. And
they
that's
just
why I
did-
went to that.
It was funny because I bought SC2E2 in 2021. I think it was before Street Date. Someone had a copy of the collected edition of Strange Adventures. So I bought over to Clay to sign on one of my breaks for my table. He goes, This is my first. I get to sign my first ever copy of this, and I'm
Oh,
going to say
cool.
that Tom King does all the time, which bugs the hell out of me. So when you see him at another con, you can show it to him, and he'll get a laugh out of it. And I took it to New York Comic Con, and Tom King actually did get a massive laugh as I explained the situation. He's actually a very chill guy.
I'm sure he is. Yeah, the talking head stuff to me, yeah, I don't. I know that's kind of his hallmark. Some of his dialogue's really good. I do. I did use the 9 panel thing for August once in a way that I thought really worked, but I was like, I'm going to use this for like 2 pages. Like to me, that's such a sparing. It's like a spice that's really strong, and it's got to be used sparingly. I think not in every story, but like for that to be the meat and potatoes of what you do, especially for like a crossover event, that's a big deal. Yeah, I am a little left. Yeah, I just that doesn't agree. It doesn't feel like comic books to me in a big way, especially when you're talking about DC Comics, a crossover, one of the big events. It really does. I don't think that the Tom King sort of thing scales to that done in that way.
Yeah. But I think it's better with the self-contained books where the
Yeah.
canonicity is a little more fluid.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the.
I mean,
That's the,
like Omega Man. I don't know how it's still canon, but Omega Man was really good.
I tried to read that. I know I'm a big Kyle Rayner fan too, and so
It's
I
a little
just didn't get into
bleaker.
it.
It's a little bleaker, but it's really good, in my
All right, I'll
opinion.
give it another shot.
He also apparently did a very good job on Human Target. Look at the
I
canonicity.
enjoyed it, but I hated what they did to those characters.
And I said, but it's not canonical, so
Yeah, I get it. I just when you say it is non-canonical, and I agree, that's fine. But there's so much there that is like, I guess there's really no other way to say it, but just so ugly about one of the nicest superhero teams in. I guess I know they're not really like post Rebirth and 52, not like super canon, but like that was one of the brightest, nicest runs, and to make them just so tawdry and ugly, the JL, the sort of bwahaha,
JLI, yeah.
yeah, I guess that I, yeah, I just, that said, I enjoyed every issue of that. I love the artwork. I was interested in the story. Um, I can't say like Alex Strange, or Adam Strange. I was just like, I hate this. I hate what they're doing. I can't enjoy it. Human Target, I could enjoy. Joey's saying Scott Snyder's Witches.
Scott Snyder's Witches, that gets stuff gives me nightmares.
I know of it. I've never read it.
It is a great horror book.
Raphael Albuquerque draw that? I think it was Jock, right?
It's Jock.
Okay, that's enough for me to get to check it out, to give it a look.
What's another good recent-ish thing? I'm trying to think. Also, Noctera by Scott and Tony Daniel is really good.
I love Tony Daniel's artwork. I really, and he's somebody who in the 90s he took over X-Force, and I was like, oh my god, I hate this guy's artwork. I hated it so much, and yet that if you look at his stuff, like in the 2000s, it is incredible.
Yeah,
really great stuff. There's a few artists actually who have come like they were like the dud artists when I was a kid that I was like, oh, this guy, I don't want to read that. Who have like just turned into. I mean, Tony Daniel's like one of the all-time best. I even think when he was doing the Grant Morrison run, that was good, but it wasn't like. I think in the last, I would say 8 years, he just went to a point where it was off the charts. I think that is some of the best sort of DC artwork, like in a modern sense, I've ever seen, because it's got all the detail you want, but the faces are so clean. His poses are super dynamic. His page layouts are great. And no matter what colorist he's working with, it really just pops. Just amazing stuff. And then the Noctura stuff looks amazing as well.
yeah.
Joey's saying so upset because it collected Witches up till it got delayed, came back in a magazine, and you could not get it anywhere unless you pre-ordered. That's crazy. Who published it?
Like there's a whole distillery thing going on too now, which I'm a little
okay.
hesitant on. Because I love Scott's work, but it's like,
I've been trying to think of a way to pronounce distillery that incorporates the weird way they spell it, and I'm coming up. Yeah, like I just mumble it.
You're
That's what they
actually.
deserve. Yeah, you just mumble it. I think that's the way. Um, was that Image or was that Vertigo? Witches
Uh, which is his image,
is okay. Yeah.
or at least it was image. I don't know if it still is because of
Yeah. I
distillery.
don't know what the deal is with those guys that are making deals with Distillery and Substack and what the back catalog
Yeah,
goes with and all that. But
and
yeah.
then there's some undiscovered country by Scott and Charles Soule is also really good. So
I've heard good things. I'm not like I wasn't too drawn in by it. I looked at a little bit of the artwork, and I'm always an artist first, so I'm kind of like it has to be a really great story with art I don't like for me to get into it. Long shot, buddy. I think it's time for you to go.
I mean, there's also like as I said, going back to earlier, All Star Batman and Robin. I love the art. Love the art.
It is some good stuff. Yeah, I
But
suspect.
if you ask me about the story, I have to kind of grit my teeth and say,
Well, you know what's weird about that is if you look at two things I can talk about there that I think are somewhat interesting. If you look at like Spawn and Batman from like 93, 94, the first one,
yeah,
people acted like when the goddamn Batman came about that was the craziest thing ever. Go back and read Spawn or Batman. It was there from the get go. This
yeah.
wasn't modern Frank Miller just coming up with this because he didn't care. That was his idea of Batman in his prime. It was this crazy whatnot character. Because it's weird because in year one he's not crazy.
It's the
I
thing.
mean
It's supposed to be the
crazy
same
enough to be
Batman. It
Batman.
makes no sense.
And then in Dark Knight Returns, he's a little off, but it seems called for. It seems like it's part of the
Yeah.
story. It works. He's kind of this grizzled old.
And I said
guy.
again, it's supposed to be the same character, year
Yeah.
one up through Dark Knight Returns era, and it's like I'm the weirdo where I say I think year one's a lot better than Dark Knight Returns.
I like Dark Knight Returns more. Year one is by far the superior story on every measurable level.
And well, I'm
Momentum,
also reading this
atmosphere.
in an post facto Miller going apeshit about Occupy Wall Street and everything. So it's like,
Mhm.
you know,
I don't know. I mean, I think that I wonder what he actually like thinks about that character because if you look at the All Star Batman, it's a pretty negative view of Batman. And
Yeah.
of course, I mean, if you had to defend Batman as a real person, like, well, he's nuts, he's a fascist or whatever. Like, not really. Like in the Blue Beetle trailer, like, Batman's a fascist because the guy is like Green Arrow or something. He's just that type of person. But
yeah,
the version of Batman in All Star Batman had redeeming moments, like that point where he realizes he's pushed Dick Grayson too far, and they go to his parents' gravesite, and he breaks down. Like there's a human moment there that very much is in reaction to the dick he's being the rest of the time. And
yeah, but
I wonder if that was ever going to make sense at some point.
well, there's that one issue that's in the Absolute Edition I have, which goes on beyond it, but it was supposed to be a 12-issue series or so,
Yeah.
and they only made
Wait,
9.
is there more? I think I got up till 10, and that was it. Is there more that was in the Absolute
There was
Edition?
supposed to be like 1 or 2. There was like I think up to a certain point in the Absolute Edition. I'll have to double check, but I think
wow.
I think it's up through 8 or 9 in the hardcover trade, and there's one more issue in the Absolute, and that was the issue they initially pulled because of the mis-censoring of certain words.
Oh, I have that.
Oh, I had that one CGC'd. Like what a Phoebe. I had to get it because like it's Jim Lee art and everything, but I'm like, this is the one where they had to pulp it, and this way I could say I have one of the ones they almost.
No,
pulped.
if you do your CMYK, you actually have to set your black is not. I think your black's 100%, but you need to do some different combination of. You can Google. It's like the True Black CMYK. You do a different combination of the cyan, magenta, and yellow. And they obviously had two different ones, or they brought it over from RGB, or one was just 100% CMYK, and the other one was 100% black, and then everything else. So as a guy that does that, I'm like, I know exactly how that happened, and it was hilarious to see that get through on such a not supposed to happen type of thing. I laughed so hard when that happened. I really loved it.
But like I love the art. I haven't time by Jim Lee and everything, so but it's like the Absolute Edition. But
Yeah,
it's like the story's hard to swallow. Like the portrayal of Batman, the
yeah,
portrayal of Dick, the portrayal of Vicky Vale, hell, in the portrayal of Jimmy Olsen, who shows up randomly in this thing.
yeah.
It's a little hard to swallow because he's like this horny little teenager trying to get in Vicky Vale's good graces.
Yeah, if I were in his shoes, I don't know if I'd act any better. But
Yeah,
I thought Jimmy Olsen didn't bother me. Superman bothered me. Vicky Vale
Superman was
didn't bother
definitely
me.
Superman and Wonder Woman were. Ugh, that was not great writing for them.
Wonder Woman was bad. Yeah, like Jimmy Olsen didn't bother me. Alfred was cool. Vicky Vale was cool. I didn't mind the slightly edgier take on those characters. I didn't like Black Canary.
Yeah,
I didn't
that
like how
was.
Batman behaved.
Oh god, they're literally having sex while freaking
Yeah,
corpses are burning.
yeah, it was just so like edgelord, something. I wasn't a
Yeah,
big fan.
it's
But
like
that's oh, god, sorry.
I was writing a Batman fan pilot script for fun at one point, and I had a character go, "He's the goddamn," and their older brother goes, "Language," and he goes, "It's the gosh darn Batman."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
those are actually two characters I actually do want to one day bring into DC Comics if I'm ever so lucky, because I've been working on them for over a decade for
Mhm.
fun. But it's like I really want them in DC Comics.
Oh, I found exactly what I was looking for. Okay. Um, so I'm a huge fan of Jim Lee artwork in this series. Um, and when there's some panels of like Gotham and it's raining and Batman's running around, they're like 100% the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I would almost say the pinnacle of Jim Lee's artwork in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of Frank Miller in there. And he did Death Blow, Death Blow.
Deathblow.
Back in the day, and you can see just a perfect genesis of that in this story. I think it's some of the, if you're talking like top 10 Jim Lee panels, I think a lot of them are in All Star Batman.
Yeah.
But I also suspect that he had somebody ghosting his layouts, because there'd be panels, and this is a great example of it, that Jim Lee would like never draw a face from this angle any other time I've seen it, and it's such a weird angle to draw if you look at his layouts and his style of doing things. And it looks weird. It's almost like he's not as comfortable drawing faces from this angle, and like the nostrils a little off and stuff like that. And I wonder if like Ali Garza or somebody like that was doing the layouts, and he came in and just polished them up in Jim Lee style. Because there's a lot of angles like that one of Green Lantern that I think like this just doesn't look right for Jim Lee. And I've always suspected there was something to that.
But I mean, Batman's the pinnacle. Everyone wants to work on Batman, give something. I don't know what.
I have a Batman picture on my desk. I have a Superman one too. I think it's all
Batman.
It really does.
I mean, I'm already am writing Superman with American Dreams. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like there's always a risk at on how you tell it, how it can go down. Like I would probably go more towards like a Batman animated series, style Batman characterization, because that's what I grew up watching and really. I don't do some elements of the more darker, gruffer that he's been in the last couple decades.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of even the Batman that like. The Batman you see in modern years, where he built Brother Eye for Infinite Crisis, and he's a dick to like Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. Like, I think it's apocryphal. I don't know if it actually happened, but like people were talking about to Bruce Timm or in some animated series planning thing where like, well, Batman's kind of crazy, right? And Bruce Timm like was like totally deadpan and said like Bruce Wayne is the only sane man in the world. And like that's actually my vision of Batman too. Yeah. I mean, yes, it is crazy. If you can make that logic that it's okay to dress up like a bat and do this, or it's necessary. If you make that jump, and I think that's necessary for any fiction of this scale, okay. But like to me, like the Batman that is like the pinnacle of health, who keeps himself going, who can fight through anything, has taught himself to ignore pain, to fight armies, to do this and that, but has not gotten his mental health under control in any respect, makes so little sense to me. like why would that happen? That's ridiculous. So that's always I kind of go back to that Batman was around when I was a kid, or like the Jim Aparo Batman, who was dark but not like nuts. Had a little bit of a lighthearted edge to him. Joey says, impressed by my eye for art. I'm like, if you look at this stuff as much as I do, because Jim Lee is the master, and Scott Williams, I think, is a big part of that equation when he's inking them, a huge part. That like you really notice, like when I was drawing August, I wanted a lot of things to look like a Jim Lee panel or like a modern DC Ivan Rice, somebody like that panel, and I'd look at if I had a face I was drawing, I would like I'd go through my folder of stuff that I've saved from sites like this one and look at like Jim Lee panels or Ivan Rice panels and just see how they shaded it, how much they shaded it, how much feathering they used. Really get in there.
Also, Jim Lee, one of the nicest guys in comics too.
Oh,
so
sure, I'm sure. I haven't met him. I'd really like to someday. But I noticed if I had like a weird angle of a face that I chose to draw, I'm like, okay, well, how would Jim Lee render this face? And I noticed that like they actually, a lot of artists, John Buscema, chief among them, really, they don't draw a lot of different angles. They figure out how to draw it from certain angles, and they just make that work in interesting ways over and over again. So that's why that's kind of when I discovered this about this artwork. I thought like this was off. This was like a very atypical Jim Lee angle. And I don't know if he had somebody else do that, or I know that he did have other guys, I think, doing layouts and stuff. I've read at some points, but I'd see a lot of angles, especially these up angles. And I think I've read interviews where he said, "Oh, I was drawing these up angles, and it was a little more different than what I normally do, and I had some, like some learning curve there about this series." So yeah, I've noticed it because of that. But yeah, I could talk about this stuff all day. I really have gotten into, and I really, especially if you're drawing stuff and you're trying to, because when I draw each book, when I was drawing Scarlet Twilight, I was looking at a ton of Alex Ross, a ton of the old like Will Eisner stuff, just to see like really get in there. How much do they draw the backgrounds? How much do they leave out? And in that sort of thing. And I did the same with August. And Joey's asking how much of I feel like I've grown since Scarlet Twilight to like August. Actually, interesting question, because I did August first. The August that's out now on Zoop, actually, I did in up until June of 2020 is when I finished it. We moved, and I was waiting to publish August because of the pandemic, and came up with Scarlet Twilight in the interim, and then did that. And so that's kind of was kind of a switching gears kind of thing, because I wanted Scarlet Twilight. You couldn't do all this cross hatching, or like even this sort of Jim Lee, the feathering you see here, or like if you really get into this type of thing Scott Williams does, where you kind of get this jagged thing on the edge of your shading, or even the scribbly sort of thing here, or even like the gradation you see in the shoulder shading here, where it's kind of like reflected light. That's a really modern thing. And for having done that a ton for August, because I would be looking at panels of that, and really trying to bring that into August. To do Scarlet Twilight, I was like, okay, that stuff that I've kind of grown used to using was like really not appropriate for something that was so golden age, unless I was going to do just a complete, like, this is a modern take on golden age, which it really wasn't. So I think I've grown a lot. The August stuff I'm doing now is much different than Scarlet Twilight, and I think I've leveled up in a lot of ways since then. But yeah, I always, when I look at my series, what I'm trying to do, I kind of think of, like, for August and Scarlet Twilight, I'm just thinking like, okay, here, to me, it's not a big difference in how you render it. That's a very, it's not like minimal, but it's almost like the sprinkles on top of a sundae. It's not the biggest thing. The layouts are a big thing. The shading is a big thing. The poses are a big thing. And I kind of do that the same way all the time. So to me, the rendering is like something I try to play with from project to project, to be like, okay, I want the finish on this to be more modern DC. I want the finish on this to be like very golden age, or like when Alex Ross does kind of golden age throwback stuff in his drawings. So yeah, I just change that up all the time, because I think each story kind of needs its own feel, or like to give you that little extra oomph that kind of tells you something. But yeah, that's what I think. And I think that we were talking about Night Wrath earlier. Daniel. Like that, I think was a really good example of that. It had like the right amount of '90s influence, but it almost in a lot of ways felt like a commentary on '90s artwork.
Yep.
In a really smart way.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I think I got to get going. It's almost 10 o'clock.
Oh yeah, I have to take my meds and go soon to bed.
Yeah, Daniel, any links you want me to throw up before we take off?
I'm probably gonna throw up again the American Dreams that we're having at Bandit Barge, where you can get every issue, every cover of the first arc for $40. Well, let me give me a second to pull up the link because my computer's old.
Okay. I think I've got one American Dreams Band of Bards. Throw it in there. I don't know if that's a direct.
Plus, maybe tomorrow I can spitball you my, as I said, my long-ranging Batman idea, or part of them, anyways.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, you know what? Next Monday, we should talk about our respective Batman pitches.
Oh, I don't want to reveal too much because I have these two characters I've been working on for like a decade plus. So, well, who knows? Maybe I got other concepts in mind I might have buried down somewhere.
Right. Well, I'll talk about mine and we can pick it apart if nothing else.
I mean, I got ideas for various things, but we'll see. But before it involves those two characters that I really wanted to pitch to DC.
Yeah. Cool.
I actually once pitched by mail something to DC. They had to return it unread, but at least they were nice enough to at least write the title of the script on the frickin' rejection letter, which is one of the nicest letters I ever got.
It's nice when you get that. It really is.
Yeah. Like I said, with that pitch that did not, go anywhere the other day, at least I heard back from one person that was a nice little rejection letter. Mm-hmm. Well, email.
Yeah. No, I got it.
I got the link for the sale.
Oh, okay, cool. Let me throw that in there. Is that in the private chat? Yes, it is.
It's in the private chat.
Copy that. Throw that up on the comments. So check this out if you're watching this now or later.
And also, I'll be at Baltimore Comic Con in a week, a little over a week. And I'll have American Dreams, of Night Wrath, of Rook and Knight. So I print off a small Rook and Knight batch for Baltimore. I also have copies of the Ringo nominated Cthulhu Invades Wonderland because I have a short in that.
Awesome.
And I'm going to the dinner for the first time this year, so it's gonna be interesting.
Sounds good. Sounds exciting.
Yeah. So, and I got those, and I'll have a couple prints, a couple of stickers and bookmarks. I actually found some Night Wrath bookmarks. I thought I ran out. I found like 2 little packs of Night Wrath bookmarks.
Cool. Awesome to hear.
And other than that, we're just getting the Rook and Knight Kickstarter stuff gathered up so we can hopefully get things out before December.
That's cool.
But knowing my luck, it's probably going to be a little while longer. But I don't want to even launch my next Kickstarter until at least March. So. Yeah,
so my problem has been the print for the Scarlet Twilight hardcovers has been I was looking at the files. I'd sent that over in May. We've had a lot of back and forth with the printer, but they'd go a long time before they say, well, actually, we need this. It's like could have had it earlier. Hopefully that'll be out to people soon. And other than that, just wrapping up the August Purgatory Underground campaign over at Zoop. Just going to throw in the comments there. Over 200 pages of story, concept art, deleted scenes, a lot of great stuff. Very Star Wars, very He-Man, kind of a genesis of modern sci-fi and 80s, cartoon / movie franchises. So if you're into that stuff, check it out. We got 3 days left. And this is the character, like I said earlier, this is the one I've got all my passion in. I love this character. I have a ton of plans for him. And that's probably something I'm going to stick with for a long time. Joey's saying printers are backlogged everywhere at the moment. Yeah, I definitely get that that's the case. I found for over 20 years, I've been sending stuff to press for various things. And you've got, even within the same company, you've got people who are super reliable sometimes, and then 6 months later, they're backlogged. I just get the impression with printers that it's a really tough business, and they kind of, you don't like it, but they sort of decide who they have to throw under the bus sometimes. They're like, well, this is a bigger job. We got to get this taken care of. So
yeah,
think that's just how it works.
I just lucked out and got my stuff in time for this for Baltimore.
Yeah. Joey's saying COVID is back, so we may see some disruptions there. I
Really.
certainly hope not, but fingers crossed. But on that note, I'm going to take off for the night. Daniel, thanks for coming. Joey, thanks for being in the chat. Everybody else watching, thank you for stopping by. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into some of the artwork that really inspires us, inspires me certainly. And hope you'll check out some of our projects. And if not, I'll be on Explain Yourself this Friday, talking to some other great creators. And I'll probably be back here Monday talking about some more stuff like this. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.